Hey, 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 how is everybody doing? I'm very, very excited today to be able to bring to you this topic here of like, what does it look like when you are like pursuing your dreams? You're giving it everything you got. You can't stop thinking about that thing that's inside of you. Yet, the people around you just don't understand. They just don't get it. You feel so alone. And there's all sorts of different adversity that we have to overcome, right? Like there's positive adversity where people don't understand, but we're making progress. And so we kind of have to bring them along the way. There's difficult adversity where it's kind of like, oh my goodness, I got to overcome this because it will be for my good. All sorts of different types of adversity. And actually, and you guys are going to love this, especially of those of you who love John Acuff. Who loves John Acuff? Show me the hearts. I want to see who loves John Acuff. Show me the hearts real quick. Yep, there's a few hearts. Awesome. Awesome. I love it. We're going to talk a little bit about his book, Do-Over, as kind of the direction for our conversation today. But before I get too far, let me tell you a few things. First and foremost, my name's Dave Shrine. I think most of you in the room so far know who I am. But if you don't, I'm basically an online entrepreneur who loves helping other dreamers and other small business entrepreneurs get unstuck from all sorts of silliness that keeps them from realizing their dreams online. Things like website stuff and like email stuff, all these things that you're like, man, I just got to get this done. That's what I do. All right. And so that's my role. That's what I do here on Periscope. So that's a little bit about me. And we are going to be bringing into the conversation Miss Adrian Dyer. How you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing fabulous, Dave.
I'm so glad that you were able to make this happen today. Like it's like been on my brain for a while, and earlier this week I was just like, we got to do this. Are you up for it? And you said absolutely. So you fired up?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So here's the deal. Let me just go over a couple ground rules real quick, just so you guys on Periscope and anybody watching on YouTube or Google Hangouts will know what's happening. We're basically going to talk through this conversation of adversity, perseverance, relationships. It's very important. It's a little bit ethereal, and it's just a casual talk. If you have things that you want to contribute, or if you have questions, we're going to be looking at Periscope. We're going to be looking into Periscope to handle those questions, to handle those conversation topics. When I am watching, when I'm talking to you, I will not be looking at the conversations. But Adrian, are you logged in? I think you are, aren't you, to Periscope?
Yeah.
You are. Okay. So Adrian will be looking when I'm not looking at Periscope, when I'm talking
All
to
right,
you.
I'll try to be.
Yeah. And then when Adrian's talking, I'll be taking a look at Periscope, writing down questions, things like that. If you have a question and you want to make sure that it gets seen, wait till Adrian's talking, type it in. That way I'll see it and I can make a note of it. So that's just a couple ground rules. But first and foremost, Adrian, the reason why I wanted to talk about this specifically with you is because you have been on Periscope since nearly the beginning, if not the beginning, and you've been open and honest with your story. And so just very briefly, would you just share enough to get us caught up with your story and how you've been using Periscope, because it's very powerful, it's very authentic, it's very transparent, and I know that it's helped so many people so far, and I want people to understand the perspective that you're coming from.
Yeah, so I got on Periscope I discovered it probably a month after it got started, and then I started really using it and utilizing it about, I would say like a month and a half maybe, because I was really nervous. I was like, what on earth do I scope about? And I'm sure everybody gets that at first, unless, you're like a super smart business entrepreneur person and you're like, oh, I see the potential here. So I was like really nervous. But I had become, like, the Lord had just started putting on my heart lately, reaching out to girls and guys who struggle with self-esteem issues, because it was a huge struggle of mine. I struggled with anorexia for 3 to 4 years in college. It started like freshman year of college, and the healing process really started senior year of college. And so that whole time was just it was really hard. It was really rough. And once I was able to start explaining how it was I felt in my own head, because I say anorexia, bulimia, those self-esteem issues, it's a mind game. It's a huge, hard, hidden mind game. And so if you don't have someone that you know who's gone through something similar, it's really hard to explain, hey, I might look good on the outside, but the inside is like falling apart. It's hard to put that into words, especially when you're terrified of being judged. And so I have seen the power of words and just opening people's hearts and minds, letting people know they're not alone, and that's so incredibly important. And so I started using my Periscope to just to tell my story, to be completely honest about the fact that, hey, guys, anorexia is really hard. It's not really talked about on a ground level. You know, the fact that I ate maybe an apple a day at my worst because I was terrified that any single calorie that went into my body was going to make me worthless, was going to make me ugly, and, you know, and I hated myself so much that I could not even love anyone else, and so that started destroying relationships. And yeah, so that's why I just want to be so honest about that, because if other people aren't talking about that, it's hard to be like, oh my gosh, yes, that's exactly me. So that's where I just, it was a little rough at the beginning, but I have made some amazing connections, Dave being one of them, people that just encourage me daily, and it's been incredible. So that's my Periscope.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know a lot of the people who I get to interact with on Periscope are meeting you for the first time, and I'm really happy about that, because your story is one that gives way to freedom for so many others. And for those of you who don't know my story is more outside than it is internal. My story is I worked in ministry for about 8 years. I was a full-time pastor. Yeah, information you didn't know about me. Full-time pastor, and I handled marketing and communications for a church out here in Phoenix. I came back from vacation on June 9th, and I went back to work on July 10th. And after being at a church for 10 years, they basically said, hey, after the end of this week, you're done here. And it was just a shock. It was a complete, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do now. There was no sign that it was coming. It was just out of the left field. And so it was one of these things where it was like, I didn't expect that. What the heck do I do right now? And you hit adversity in a different way. Your adversity was internal. Your adversity was mental. My adversity was external. My adversity was, something that I couldn't control. And I don't know. And one of the things that I love about you, Adrian, is even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't know. Would Adrian say that she could control her anorexia? And it's something that gives me such freedom to be able to ask you, hey, I don't understand this part of anorexia, or I don't understand this part of bulimia. I want to be educated. Can you tell me? And so that's one of the things that I love about you. And that's why I share my story. And I know that that's why you share yours, is to help bring understanding and then to help encourage. So I want to set the framework here very, very quickly. We're going to go through what John Acuff calls the do-over chart. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen so that people can see it, and you'll be able to see it here too. And I'm going to explain it. Let me share. All right. Can you see it there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, yes, now I can.
Yeah. Okay. So right here, it says the career ceiling. And this is the idea when you meet adversity in your job. And we're going to switch this to life, but I'm going to explain it as Acuff explains it. This career ceiling is when you meet adversity in your job. When you've kind of hit the ceiling, you're not going anywhere with it. You're not growing in it. It's like, well, what the heck am I going to do with my life now? You wake up and you're like, what just happened? How did I get here? This isn't what I want. And it's kind of a dead end. And that's where that's where you need to invest in skills. Moving on, and that's a voluntary thing where you are in a career ceiling voluntarily, but it's negative. Over here to the right-hand side, you have a career jump, okay? It's where you've invested in your character. It's where people see things in you, and it's voluntary, but it's also positive. You make the decision to leave a bad job or a negative place or a ceiling, and you make a jump, a positive jump voluntarily to the next place. And that's where it's your character. That's where you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Right here, you've got career bumps, which is what happened to me. It was negative and involuntary. It was, at least at the beginning, it was where I needed relationship investment more than anything else, all right? That's where it's negative, it's involuntary, and it's a bump in the road, and you need relationship to get over it. And then right here, this is what it turned into for me, was a career opportunity. It was involuntary, but it wound up being a positive thing, and it's where hustle investment pays off. And so that's going to be the framework, because Adrian, when I was looking at this, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is like the chart for life, isn't it? Like, this is the way it works out for us in life. Like, we have negative voluntary things, voluntary positive things, positive involuntary things, and negative involuntary things. And what we have invested in us at the time is what helps us get through that. So that's what we're going to do to kind of start off here. We do have one question that came through, and I want to hit it because I don't know if we'll be able to hit it later on. But very briefly, Adrian, someone asked the question, how do parents recognize anorexia in their child or bulimia in their children? What are some signs that people can look for? I want to hit this before we get into the main topic.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I know that I tried my best to hide those signs, to hide, like what was going on, because I didn't want them to fix what I was doing, because I couldn't describe that I thought that I would feel more worthy if I was thinner, because I knew ultimately deep down that that's silly. Your self-worth cannot be based on how thin or big your body is. Like, that's just ridiculous, because first of all, your body is temporary and it's going to change the older you get, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I knew I was being, in their minds, silly. And I was worried that if I, opened up to them, they wouldn't understand, but two, they would be like, oh, well, don't be scared of food. Just start eating. It's no big deal. And it's just like, that's not where it's all in the mind. That's what's hard, because you can't see it. I know for me, I started pushing people away. I started cutting people off. At dinners, I would kind of push my food around the plate to make it look like I was eating, but I wasn't. I started cutting certain things out of my diet. Like, I started cutting bread, pasta, like anything carb, anything that had a high calorie count scared the crap out of me. So I cut it out. My personality started disappearing too. Like, I was a super, kind of like now, like I was a very bubbly, outgoing. I started becoming more outgoing in high school. I used to be deathly shy, but I started being more outgoing and more like, opposite of that. I started shutting down. I was very, very moody, and that was because my brain was not getting the nutrients it needed. So scientifically, I was messing with my body. As a girl, I lost my period, and that can be scary as far as, if you want to have a family in the future. And I told my mom that, and she was pretty concerned. She was like, that's not good. I was abusing laxatives, so I was buying, but a lot of that was like, so I guess the things that you can like pick up on are, are they shutting down? Are they extremely moody and defensive? I was very, very defensive. If anyone asked me, "Are you okay?" my immediate answer was, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing great. I'm doing fine." What? Like what? Is there something wrong with me? Like I was analyzing everything people said to me, looking for a potential judgment or a way that they saw me that I could try to, because I was very concerned with how people saw me. And so I wanted to control what people were thinking about me by controlling my appearance. And that's a whole other mess. But I guess just, like if your kids are starting to shut you out, and that's not how they usually act, very moody, not eating in front of you, because chances are if they're not eating in front of you, they're not eating when they're not in front of you either. I was lying to people. I was telling my family, I'm going to go eat at my friend's house, and then I'd go to my friend's house, and I would tell them, oh, I just ate with my family. So very secretive, very defensive,
if they see these signs, Wendy is the one who asked the question, and she just wants to know, what's the first step? What's the first best step that you should do if you see this sort of thing happening with your child?
Oh my gosh, honestly, it's different for everybody. It really is. But I would definitely say just continue to love on them. Let them know that no matter what they look like, no matter what they do, you do love them and you're here for them. Like that's one thing that really helped me through, was I knew deep down that even though I hated myself, my family loved me. And it was hard for them to hear them say, like, oh, you're beautiful. Because I'm like, well, I don't feel beautiful. So it was just like, whatever, that's what parents are supposed to tell their kids.
Yeah.
But like even if they are not opening up to you, you have to be so persistent and just let them know, hey, I'm here for you. No matter what, no matter how alone you might feel, I'm here for you and you're special to me. So
Yeah.
just it's so hard because you can do that for 3 years and not see any results. But
So it might be one of those things where Wendy, you'd probably do well to send Adrian a tweet on Twitter, and
yes,
you guys can
absolutely.
converse a little bit because Adrian's just fantastic about that. So as we kind of step into this, a little bit more of the here and now and relationships, obviously the types of relationships that you needed in the middle, and you were just describing it, that you needed in the middle of your battle with anorexia, and the type of relationships that I needed in the middle of, my unexpected being laid off, they were different. And as we grow, we need different types of relationships. So I just wanted to start off and by sharing with you, Adrian, my experience when I got laid off, and just kind of, hear how that might be similar to some of the experiences that you've had. But I know for me, when I got laid off, it was completely unexpected. There were a lot of tears. I loved what I was doing. I didn't want to leave. And being a Christian, a lot of people started to call me and start saying, well, God has a plan. And when God closes a door, he opens a window, and all these things. And, the scripture, God works out all things for the good of those who love him. And it's like, okay, that's all good. And like, I know that. But it was really, really hard to hear because I don't feel that. And how you were saying, like, you're telling me I'm beautiful. Well, I don't feel beautiful. It's the
Yeah,
same thing. Like, you're telling me God's going to take care of it. And that might be the case, but I don't feel right now like I'm being taken care of. And I know it, right? But I just don't feel that way. And so
right.
the types of relationships that I needed during what John Acuff would say, is kind of a bump in the road. And I know that that's grossly understated for so many people, but like, for the sake of the illustration, like a bump in the road, the types of relationships that I needed somebody to come alongside me and say, hey, look, you're not alone. Like, I understand what you're going through. I needed somebody to come alongside me and say, quite honestly, the most helpful thing I got was when I called my buddy Doug, who is owner of Sidewinder Subs, another entrepreneur. And I told him, he goes, dude, bro, that blows. Everybody hates to leave when it's not on their own terms. But you know what? This is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. You're going to look back a year from now and you're going to be like, I'm so glad I was going to leave anyways. I'm glad it happened. And it's starting to turn out that way. But that's what I needed more than anything else, was somebody to say, look, you've got this. Like, you can make this happen. Because everybody in my life didn't understand what I was going through, didn't understand exactly what I was feeling. But Doug got it. And his words were, they kind of had a little bit of anger in them. They kind of had a little bit of smart alecky, and they had a lot of reality and a lot of truth. So that was the type of relationship that I needed the most when I was in what John Acuff would say was in a negative, involuntary transition in my life. How would you describe, I mean, you kind of described it already, but very briefly, how would you describe the type of relationships that you needed when you were in this mental game of not seeing the worth that you had to offer, not seeing the value that your life inherently brought to others? What were the type of relationships that meant the most to you, that you needed to surround yourself? And
Yeah,
maybe tell me in as if that was the type of relationships that I need right now. Like, explain it to me that way.
yeah. No, like the relationships that I had that were super, super important were, well, my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, and other girls who struggled with self-esteem. I know that my roommate also struggled with anorexia, and when we opened up to each other about it, it was just like a whole new world, essentially, and we just bonded so much because we were able to hold each other accountable. Um, and I know, like, just my family relationships, they didn't necessarily understand, but they were willing to love me regardless. So the relationships that I needed were ones that I knew I could trust, and that's really, really hard. But you also need relationships where the people can tell you the truth. Like you said with your friend, he's just kind of like, dude, really? Come on now, get out of that funk. You need to just
Yeah.
like wake up, smell the rosebuds, essentially. And I had a couple people that were just a couple of my really close girlfriends who've been friends of mine for years, and they were just like, Adrian, really? You're beautiful. What on earth are you talking about? And it was that kind of like perspective shift. You needed people to be honest with you because it hurts and it sucks, but it changes your perspective and it helps you see yourself
Mhm.
how they see you. And when you have a warped perspective of yourself and you feel worthless and useless and like, what the crap am I doing now? You need someone to look at you and be like, well, your path is right there. Go for it. You know, you're
Yeah.
wandering around circles over here. Go over there, kind of thing. So people who are honest, who love you, um, and people that, and even people that you know understand
Yeah.
what the heck you're going through, which is why I'm scoping and periscoping, because I know that people don't have that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing that you hinted there is this idea of feeling alone. And I know for me, when I started doing the entrepreneur thing and I started rolling with it, it was a very, very lonely feeling, right? And when you're stuck in the middle of, some sort of an adversity or some sort of a battle, you can feel like the entire world is out to get you. And John Acuff says these things, and I've kind of adopted it as my own thing, but like, you start to hear these voices, right? You hear these voices saying you're worthless. You hear
Yeah.
these voices saying nobody understands you. You hear these voices saying if you told someone, they would judge you for it. You start hearing these voices, as an entrepreneur, no one's going to buy from you. Nobody's going to contract your services. Why would anybody pay you for anything? And you've already hinted at some of those voices that you hear, like you're ugly, or you have no value, or you're too heavy, or you're too fat. And you hear these voices. And what I hear you saying is you need somebody to come alongside and basically counteract those voices and say to you, no, like those voices, they're not true. Like they're not real. The voices, they come in and they try to take you out of the game, because it's so much easier to be taken out of the game than it is to actually get in there, persevere, and get through it. It's so much easier. I don't know if you saw yesterday. Did you see the scope that I did with the Shia LaBeouf? How do you say his last name? Do you know?
Maybe
LaBeouf?
I say LaBeouf.
LaBeouf. Let's say LaBeouf. Did you see the scope that I did where I showed his like just do it thing for Shia LaBeouf? Did you see that?
No, I think I saw like a notification for it, and then my phone was freaking out all day yesterday, and I could only like barely watch people's scopes for 2 seconds. So no, I didn't catch it.
Well, the whole thing is it's him just looking at it and he's like, just do it. Just do it. Make your dreams happen. And it's totally one of those things that I was like, that's the type of person that I need to surround myself with right now. And so one of the things that I did, Adrian, is tell me if you relate to this. I found that it's really, really hard to find people who are like me in real life. I think dreamers like you and I, people who now you're on the other side of that, and I'm sure you still have people keeping you accountable, but you're starting to look forward to your life. You're looking forward to the things that you want to do. And you've probably heard me say this, but I think dreamers like us, it's so hard for us to find community because dreamers are a rare breed. So many of us start out as dreamers. We get the dream sucked out of us by people telling us to be more realistic. And it's really, really hard to find people who have rejected that idea of being more realistic and being more dreamy, I guess you could say. Like, no, I actually can do this. I want to persevere and I want to make this happen. What type of relationships have you found now that you're kind of on the other side of it? What type of relationships have you found, and what have been the things and where have you found them of people who have kind of said, hey, like, look, you've got this. You can make this happen. Where have you found those relationships? What do those look like?
Yeah. I have found those relationships, to be honest, mostly in people that I have been able to open up to and explain. Like, okay, so I've had Addie on my scripts a couple times, and she's a girl that I love to death. She is a sophomore in high school, and she's a dreamer, and she has also struggled with body image issues. And I opened up to her about my struggles, and she opened up to me, and she totally understands what I want to do, why I want to do it. So people that you've been able to open up to and be honest with, and they totally get you, those are the people who are like, I am 100% behind you. I know you can do this, And like, I say Periscope, honestly, like, because the people who are on here, especially in the beginning, are the people who see the potential, the people who are dreaming big dreams because suddenly, they have people that they can talk to and understand and hang out with, and like, so many people on here are dreamers and are like, go for it, get your dream. And they actually talk about what they're doing to get there. People who are talking about blogging and business and all these different tips. And it's just like, these people, they're dreamers and they are helping you out. It's like you, Dave, I got on your scopes and you were talking about, different ways to get started with things. And it's just like, yes, like that's what I need. So like when I was trying to explain what I do on Periscope to my mom, and she was just like, oh, I mean, that sounds great. And I'm just like, oh, you killed my thunder. Like, totally killed it. Just like, it's just, oh, finding a community that understands you because they've been through similar things is the community that will stand behind you when you try to do something. And that's what you need. You
So
totally need that.
let me ask you this. So you said like you started opening up. I know for me, I feel very vulnerable online. I'm very authentic, but I've always said that being authentic doesn't mean being 100% transparent. So
Mhm.
there's certain things that I don't share online. There's certain things that I don't say. I will say, I know what people rely on me for day in and day out through Twitter, through my emails, through Periscope. And so I try to deliver that. But I have those days. I like to say I struggle with depression. I take medication for depression
Mhm.
because I have extreme highs, but I also have extreme lows. When I'm on my medication, it allows me to be more of who I am,
Mhm.
more of who I was all growing up. But because I have such extreme highs, it has a tendency to bottom out.
Right.
But I know what people expect from me. But there are times where I feel kind of down and out, and I get nervous about opening up to anybody who I've met online because I know that they see me as this positive influence in their life. And there's this thought in my brain that if I open up, then they're going to see me for what I really am. They're going to see me as being somebody who's just making it up as I go. And honestly, that's what everybody does. Everybody
Yeah, it's
as they
so
go
true.
along. The people who you see who are the gurus who are in your mind are like 100 steps ahead of you. They're just one step ahead of you. They're
Yeah,
just making it
totally.
up as they go. They just have a little bit more years on you. That's it. So I get nervous that if I say, "Hey, Adrian, like I'm really doubting, I'm really doubting my approach here. I feel really down. Like I had a broadcast today, and I know people were saying it was good, but like it wasn't. Like, how do you get to that point of first opening up and kind of being vulnerable? And obviously, it's different when you're talking about anorexia versus I just had a bad day. But to everybody, their reality is where they're at the time. So I think in that way, it's all the same weight. It might have different consequences, but it's all the same weight. How do you get past that fear of being judged or being misunderstood or whatnot? Like how do you do that?
Yeah. And that is the question. And I think a big because like honestly, okay, so a few days ago actually, I was feeling really just kind of down, like, why am I doing this? Like, yeah, I have some followers and stuff, but like why I was just feeling really like not useless, but I was just like I'm not gonna make that much of a difference because like there's such big personalities on here like Justice and Alexa Carlin and the girl who just won the spot for I think that's what got me started thinking the girl who won the spot for the voted in guest speaker at the summit, Alex Beeden, I think her name is. And she's like a business girl, but she's also a very motivating girl, very positive girl, and she's already got thousands of followers. And so I got on her scope when they announced her, and I'm just watching. I'm like, she's saying a lot of the same things I am, except she's got a bigger following. So why did I bother? Like,
Yeah,
and so I just kind of started feeling really down, like, ugh. And
yeah.
then I realized what I was doing. I realized I was comparing myself to other people, and I remember the scopes where I talk about don't compare yourself to other people. Like, oh, smack! Like, I'm doing exactly what I tell people not to do, and so it's
Yeah,
just like, okay, well, I'm holding myself accountable right now. And
yeah,
so I turned that feeling into a scope the next morning. I was talking about how like your story is yours for a reason and your story is important. Even if you don't have thousands of hundreds of followers, maybe you're making someone just a handful of people, maybe you're making their day completely different. Maybe they're hearing something for you that they're going to carry through the rest of their lives and affect more people. You might not have a bit like 1,000 followers or something on Periscope, but maybe you affect 5 people that have an impact on thousands of others, because of you. So it's just measuring your self-worth is impossible. It's
yeah.
impossible to measure your impact, your worth. You just have to do it. And as scary as that is, sometimes it's even, everyone experiences that. Everyone experiences those feelings of like, oh, is this worth it? Why am I spending all this time and energy and money
Yep.
putting you know, putting myself out there, especially when you deal with emotions, you know,
Yeah.
especially when it's something that's deep, because then, holy crap, thousands of people have heard this by now. It's just, uh, it's
I
so
know what you mean.
life. Yeah, it is. It's just you just have to continue to believe or just know you're having an impact on someone, you know,
Yeah.
like, and you can't, if you judge yourself by what other people are doing, you're going to get stuck and you're not going to go anywhere. So,
So what I hear you saying there is kind of this idea of when you're down and out, one of the big things that you can do to have that first step of vulnerability is to remember that you are making a difference. It might not be exactly what you see, it
yeah,
might not be exactly what you feel, but you have to mentally know that you are making a difference. And one of the things that you said right there is it's impossible to define your self-worth. And I think that's such an astute observation because truthfully, you and I, we're both very open and honest about our faith. We're both Christians. We're both, big believers, 100% sold out believers in
yes,
who Jesus was and what he said. And I realize that not everybody is. And a
hmm,
lot of people, they have mixed bag feelings about religion. And so I don't go on Periscope to try to push my faith on anybody, but it's impossible for me to be who I am and not recognize my faith because it drives so much of who I am. So the way I've kind of defined how I find my worth and how people should find their worth is what people are willing to do for you. Because as a Christian, what we believe, and so I'm just educating those out there who don't know what Christians necessarily believe about this. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. I think you should. But we believe that Jesus died upon the cross, that we were worth saving. And so Jesus died to save us from ourselves and to save us from our sin so that we could be with him. That's what Jesus was willing to do for us. That is how much worth we had. And that's how much he was willing to do for us. For those of you who don't have faith in Christ, one, if you ever have questions, feel free to talk to Adrian or I. But for those of you who don't have a religion or so to speak that you find your worth and that sort of thing, what are people willing to do for you? Because that's ultimately a lot of where worth comes from. People are willing to go to the ends of the earth. So many people are willing to do just about anything for you. And that helps us understand that, yes, I do have worth. People are willing to sacrifice for me. People are willing to do things to help keep me healthy. People are willing to do things to step into my life when they see that I'm not making the right choices. And so I
hmm,
think that's one of those deals that where does your worth come from? Well, we've already said where it comes from for us, but for those who don't, necessarily have a faith system, what are people willing to do for you? Because there's a lot of people out there who are willing to do anything and everything to
yeah,
help you understand that you bring worth, that you bring value. A couple comments that were coming in. Somebody said, I'm meeting a lawyer about my parents at 1 and I'm feeling super vulnerable. Totally get that. You're going into a new situation. That's really, really, I get nervous when I go into a client meeting with somebody in an industry that I've never talked to
yeah,
before. I don't know anything about it. And so I get nervous. I'm like, am I going to be seen for what I really am? Somebody who knows marketing but doesn't know your industry other than what I've read. Somebody else said, Saled said, our low moments help us experience the joy of our high moments. And I
oh my
totally believe that. I
gosh,
love that. We wouldn't know the highs without the lows.
absolutely,
And Wendy says, God is always using my words to hold me accountable, kind of what you were saying there,
yeah,
Adrian. So totally, guys, if you have comments, if you have questions, if you want to just contribute to the conversation, use Periscope right now to make that happen, and I will be checking it out. So, Adrian, what are some of the relationships in your life that are most valuable right now? I know we were talking a little bit. You're kind of thinking career-wise. You're
hmm,
thinking about dreams. You're thinking about some of the things that are just inside of you. It can be
yeah,
kind of scary. What are some of the relationships that you would say the dreamer needs? We've kind of come out of this place of darkness, this place of kind of destructiveness or whatnot. We're kind of stepping into this and starting to look at investing in our future, starting to look at hustling, the potential. What are some of the relationships that you need and that you would say people like us in this place need right now?
yeah. Well, I would definitely say one of the top things that you need is relationships with fellow dreamers because they, you know, so like my relationship with Dave, because I'll tell him something, I'll tell him this crazy idea, and he'll be like, oh my gosh, that's totally possible. Wow, that's a really great idea. I'll tell my mom the same idea, and she'll be like, oh, well, that's nice. You know, and it totally makes me feel like it's not possible. You know, like I immediately start questioning, like, well, if she doesn't think that's, I mean, maybe it's not possible. I don't know. Like, you know, so you need, well, so like one of my top, you know, my husband, he is. he encourages me, and it was funny because when I first found Periscope, I showed it to him. I was like, "This is really cool. You can totally use this platform for so many different things. Look at it, it's so cool." And he was like, um, "Yeah, I don't want to spend my time worrying about that." I was like, "Oh, you're killing me." I was like, seriously? I was like, "You know what? Fine. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna do it for 3 weeks, and I'm gonna see what happens." And a week into it, he was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna start scoping." And so like for you need people that will, just first of all, people that understand you and love you and can support that. But now he's using it and seeing it as a way to for his art. He scopes while he draws his comic books, and he talks about it. He kind of teaches people about drawing and all that kind of stuff. And he is seeing possibilities for ways that he can use his Periscope for his own personal brand and all that kind of stuff. And so we're like, we'll be sitting at dinner, just talking about all these different ideas. And so I was talking to him about, like, ooh, maybe I can use a Periscope to start a brand that I've been dreaming about for several years now. And he goes, oh, yes, that's such a good idea. And my roommate in college who built this idea with me, she's just like, oh, wow, this is really cool. So fellow dreamers, people that are going to give you energy instead of just kind of cut it off because they cannot see what you see. So, and it was funny because this is just a side note, but like my mom, I love her to death, but she's not an entrepreneur mind at all. And it was funny, the same thing happened with my wedding and my centerpieces in the table. I wanted to make them, and I had this awesome idea about how I was going to lay cloth over these boxes that I was going to poke a hole in and put this lighted branch coming up out of it. And I explained it to her 100 times, I swear. And every single time, she was like, I just don't see how that's going to work. And it immediately made me upset, and I was like, fine, I'm not even going to do it, like, just like, so aggravated.
Yeah.
But I was just like, you know what? I'm going to prove her wrong. And so maybe you need those doubters to prove you wrong. So if you have a doubter relationship, prove them wrong because you can totally do whatever you set your mind to do. So I ended up making a sample of it, and she looked at it, she goes, wow,
Yeah.
that's really pretty. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you need the supportive relationships, but also the doubters, because
Yeah.
maybe the doubters can be like, well, what about this? And it make you think of different ways to approach the same problem, or maybe they'll just give you fire to do it because you're so ticked off that they don't
Yeah.
do it like you do.
Yeah, that's really, really good. We're getting some really great feedback in here. Wendy says that her husband has no interest in Periscope, and I will tell you, Wendy, my wife has no interest in Periscope either. I'll convince her like once a month to get on, and I love it when she does, but she has no interest. Dustin says it's pronounced Shia LaBeouf. So there we go. Now we know. Now, always and forever.
Yeah.
Mole Mesa, you're awesome. You're just contributing some awesome comments in there. She's just been super encouraging. So thank you for hanging out with us, Mole Mesa. And then Wendy asked the questions, how can we show others value in Periscope? And so, Wendy, I want to lean into that real quick because I think you're asking a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think it extends beyond just Periscope. What I have found, so I went back to Kentucky 3 weeks ago, and I was meeting up with all my family. They live in Paducah. I was meeting up with all my family, and every single one of them that came over, they were like, oh, David, it's so good to see you. We're so happy that you were able to make it out here and spend some time with us. And but I have to say, I see everything that you're doing on Facebook, and I just don't understand what it is that you do. What is it that you actually do? And so then I start explaining to them, well, what I do is I help entrepreneurs. A lot of people, they really have skills, talents, abilities, things that they want to do online, and they want to help other people. They want to turn into it a business. Like, that's nice. How does it actually turn into a business?
Yeah.
And so I explain a little bit more, and they wind up saying, okay, well, I guess that makes a little bit more sense. But I have found that I need to give more people credit when I'm explaining to them something that they don't understand, something that's foreign to them, something that they just don't get. I need to give them a little bit more credit than I would naturally in a reactionary mode. And what I mean is this. I have come to a point where I recognize that I am rare in my real life, but I am one of many in my online life. And they're two of the same, they're the same thing. I'm not one person online than I am, than a different person online than I am in real life. But I found that because it's so hard, that because so many of us have had the dreams sucked out of us, that finding other people who see the potential before it's ever there, who hear an idea and see what it looks like 10 steps down the road, like it just doesn't exist in people, and it's through no fault of their own. And your mom was trying to be helpful, saying,
Yeah.
Adrian, I just don't see it. You probably don't want to waste your time on it. Or while Colin was probably being, yeah, I don't see that. I'm not going to waste my time. Whatever, if you want to do it. They just don't get it. And so you got to give them grace, and you got to realize, you know what, they're not wired like I am. But you have to keep your eyes open. You know, you got to put on the glasses to go out there and find the people. All right, this is a voice of somebody who's not going to say you need to be more realistic. This is somebody who's going to say, you want to start a multi-million-dollar business? All right, you're going to have to work really, really hard. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot in your life. But if you're committed to this, I'll come alongside you. We'll do this together. You totally got this. But don't come whining to me 3 months into it that you haven't gotten 1,000 followers yet. Because if that's going to be your attitude, you're never going to make it. That's the type of voice that I need to hear. And I just don't get that in real life. And it's to nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
So much sense. It's incredible how much I have been able to connect with people on Periscope that are just completely and totally 100% on the same level as me, and I'm just like, where are you in your life for real? You know, like there's no way I can talk to, like there's maybe a couple people in my family. I was telling my sister about Periscope, and she's like, yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad that it's working out for you, but you know, she's focused on other things. She's in college and she's headed to her sophomore year. She is not thinking about business and potential, and she's just thinking about her next exam and surviving.
Yep.
So, like, but coming on a Periscope, like talking to you, DMing you on Twitter, and just being like, hey, I have this idea. And you're like, yes, let's do it. And they will like give me tools and they'll just talk to me. And I feel so like empowered in a sense with the people that I've connected with. Like Dave, like you're awesome. And you like, you know, and I'm saying like a lot. You invited me to to broadcast, and you said go get a website, and so I am, and I'm doing those things. I need people in my life that are like, oh well, a website would be nice. No, I need people who are like, yes, start it. You have no idea what's going to happen, and you need people who are also going to be very brutally honest with you. It's going to take blood, sweat, and tears, but if you're willing to put in those blood, sweat, and tears, you're going to get somewhere.
Absolutely. I love that. There's some really good feedback still coming through. Salad Motivates basically took what I said and boiled it down to, I am rare, but I am one of many. So powerful. So that's tweetable right there. Mole Motivates said, let's let them think that I'm crazy and go on about my business. And I love that, because people will think you're crazy, but you're not alone in it. There's going to be all sorts of adversity that you face. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be opportunity. There's going to be ceilings. There's going to be all sorts of issues that you encounter. And you need people in your life who are going to speak a positive message. But I think it's also important to realize what type of needs you need in the moment, and to always I have some friends who are my entrepreneur friends who tell me what I need there. But I make sure to have the other friends who are basically like my moral friends, who are my life trajectory friends, who don't necessarily get the entrepreneur thing, but they know me, you know, as well or better than I know myself. And so recognizing what friends you need for what time, giving grace when somebody weighs in on something that they don't know, but also being willing to hear their words and being willing to embrace them. So Adrian, as we kind of get to this point of wrapping up, you know, when we were talking about this, I said, I just want it to be more like a coffee shop talk where you and I are just kind of hanging out, just sharing our stories, dialoguing about life. Is there anything that you want to say before we finish our cup of coffee, so to speak? Is there anything that maybe we haven't hit that you think would be important to hit?
I think we've hit a lot of just really awesome stuff, and I just want to say, like, how don't give up. Seriously, don't give up. Like, I I cried after my third scope, because I was like, oh, this is the most awkward, awful thing ever. What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? And I just also want to let people know that it is so totally, completely okay to be vulnerable. Yeah. Yes, you will have people that will, you know, hunt you down for it or will take advantage of the fact that you're sharing really personal things. But I have far more people on Periscope and on Twitter. You know, I guess it's kind of the same crowd, but I have so many more supporters than I
Yes.
do haters. You know,
Yes.
like, and it's funny because when trolls get on my broadcast and they say things like, you know, like open boobs and like all these kinds of things, and you know, I just ignore it. But there are so many people who will jump on that troll and be like, block him, get him out of here, dude, stop, this is not right. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, the support has been astounding to me. And
Yep.
so if you are nervous, if you don't know what to scope about, if you're not sure that you will make a difference or that anyone will find you interesting, it's a total lie. Every single one of you has something that is unique and awesome about each one of you. I know it. I believe it. I have seen it over and over and over and over and over again. And someone out there will connect with you and will hear your story. And it may not be hundreds of thousands of people. It may be just a handful. But you don't know where those handful will take what you give them. You know, you
Yeah.
don't know the effect that you can have, the ripple effect. You may just see the first ring of that ripple effect.
Yeah.
But isn't that okay? Isn't
Yeah.
it okay if you can just impact a few people? Like, I get really, you know, kind of down when I feel like, well, I'm never going to have the impact that Alexa Carlin has, and it's just like you have no idea. First of all, you're putting boundaries on yourself because you're like, well, I'm never going to, and you know, they've already started, so why should I even try to get into this field? You know, it's just like, stop it. You know, like, don't put limits on your future. Just start. You have to start, and if you start, there's no telling where you can go. It may
Yeah.
look like this, but it's still moving forward. You know, like it's still
Yeah.
moving up. It's still moving somewhere. You know, the only one stopping you is you. So I want people to know that because, and like, but even me, like I have a lot of followers now, and I still get nervous, and I still
Yeah.
get down on myself, and I'm still like, no one needs to hear this today. And then I get on and scope, and people are like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And I'm just like, well, gee, you know, like I would have screwed myself over if I hadn't been like, you know, if I hadn't scoped today or something.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you have no idea the impact that you can have on someone,
Yeah.
and you cannot measure your self-worth, especially you, because you only see yourself as, you know, you don't see yourself how other people see you. And so
Right.
for you to attempt to measure your self-worth, it's just like, you're going to get a measure that's that small, but to
Yeah.
someone else, you're that big. So,
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I want to tag along that. You were saying, you know, there's other people out there. I think one of the keys is putting yourself out there. That's one of the things I think that I think a lot of people have a hard time over is getting over is, well, nobody's reaching out to me. Nobody's responding. The big thing is you got to put yourself out there. It takes risk. It's very dangerous. I say dreaming is very dangerous. It's going to take risk. It's going to take sacrifice. But if you put yourself out there, that gives the people who are like you an opportunity to find you. If you
yeah,
don't put yourself out there, don't be surprised when people don't find you or when people don't resonate with your story because they haven't heard it. And I'm still shocked. Actually, I shouldn't be shocked at this point. What I was going to say is I'm still shocked at how many people I've been broadcasting for however long and how many people still haven't heard certain messages that I put out there or still haven't heard certain things that I say. I think I've said it all, right? But then I launch something and someone's like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. And it's like, that's one person. But that I say you can never change the world, but you can change somebody's world. And so it's one of those deals that motivates me to keep going. So Adrian, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this, and I think we covered so much. I'm going to chop it up into little pieces, and I'll put it out on Twitter. I'll share with you some links so you can send it out to your followers. Maybe we can rehash some of this stuff in individual scopes later. But it was fantastic. Thank you for hanging out. And is there any place you want to send people, or maybe you want to text real quick, say hey or something in the broadcast so people can make sure to follow you before we log off here, or anything that you want to say before we say goodbye?
I mean, I pretty much feel like we've hit so much, and honestly, we could just keep talking for hours and hours and hours.
Good.
We'll not cover everything, but no, this has been so great. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you for everyone watching. Oh my gosh. Whenever I look down, I see just so many great comments and everything. So Thank you guys so much. You have no idea the support and encouragement that you give us on a daily basis when you get on our scopes and when you
Yeah,
connect with us. That
absolutely.
encourages me every single day to keep going. Like, it would be so incredibly awkward if you just get on and like no one says anything. Like you see people in the room and no one's saying anything. It's like really like, oh, what am I doing? But you guys are amazing. Every single one of you that hearts, that comments, everything. I appreciate it so incredibly much. You
Yeah.
have no idea the value that I place on you guys. You guys are amazing. So thank you. You guys can DM me on Twitter. I'm working because it's safe. I am working on a blog and a website to hopefully build a brand that can celebrate the uniqueness in each individual. So
Yeah.
we'll see what
Awesome.
happens.
Very cool. So guys, make sure you're following Adrian. Hope this was encouraging for you. Go ahead and share right now. Here's the deal. Here's how I've been telling people to share. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, share it with them specifically, okay? If you think your followers would benefit from this, tonight at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock p.m., they're just hanging out, share it with them. The reality is none of us know the type of day that somebody else is having, and none of us know the type of reach that a broadcast like this will receive. And so your share may be the catalyst that leads to somebody who desperately needs to be told, look, you can do it. You've got this. You don't have to stay in the darkness that you're in. Your share could be the one that gets this broadcast in their ears and could change their outlook for tomorrow. So if you know one or two people, share it with them individually. If you're ready to share this with the world, share it with everybody. It will show up in their feed, and it may be the exact broadcast that they need to change their outlook for tomorrow or the next day. So guys, thank you so much for hanging out. We will see you later.